Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for taking the time to get together for this important topic. Thank you to Simba Mukonzo and Mukfin for setting this up. It's an important discussion. I think the industry at the moment is in a very interesting place. We had many years where risks were reasonably the same, and it was almost a bit of a cookie cutter to go from one company to the other with products. Everything was similar, the risks stayed the same. But what we have at the moment is we've got quite a variety of emerging risks, and these risks change all the time. The severity can change, can differ from one country and one segment of the industry to another quite comprehensively. The frequency of certain risks can be quite big in certain countries and low in other countries. And the complexity of these risks has also increased quite dramatically. So, we have the usual sort of cyber risk, weather-related claims that are increasing, etc. But then we've got increased technology types of risks. We've got risks in the coming up now in the AI environment where companies are implementing AI. It means that the nature of liability risks change. It also means that the way that we look at things like business continuity risks will change. So there's a whole bunch of very important changes in how we underwrite, how we assess claims, and then also how we sort of interpret the intelligence that we have within our businesses to be able to underwrite better, to be able to understand our clients better, etc. So it is becoming more and more complex, and we've always had challenges with skills development, capacity building, etc. But this is now just a lot more pronounced, and it's not as easy as it used to be to just have somebody work for a while and accumulate skills through almost a bit of learning from the people around them. The qualifications are becoming more important, and formal qualifications, etc. Designations within institutes and associations are coming back and becoming more important. And all of that is a result of the fact that we need more skilled people, and we need people with more comprehensive skills. So that's sort of a little bit of the setting for this discussion, to just talk about the opportunities that we have with skills development, capacity building, and this new risks that are coming in. So maybe we can just go around the room for the sake of the audience to introduce everybody. Simba, maybe we can start off with yourself. If you can just sort of give a quick overview of who you are and who you are with.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for putting this discussion together. And thank you to all panelists for making time for today's discussion. My name is Simba Mukonzo. I'm the Group CEO of the Mukfin Group. Thank you.
Dr. Webster.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Simba, for having me this afternoon. And so my name is Webster Twaambo. I'm the CEO of Finsbury Reinsurance coming out of Zambia. Thank you.
And Opelo?
Many thanks for having me this afternoon, Tony. My name is Opelo Lefhoko, Chief Executive Officer at Mayfair Insurance Botswana.
Thank you very much, Opelo. Muzi?
Thank you, Tony. My name is Muzi Shongwe. I'm the Acting General Manager at Ezulwini Re Reinsurance. We are a reinsurance company based in the Kingdom of Eswatini.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Muzi. And Kopano?
Thank you so much, Tony. My name is Kopano Radebe, the Executive Manager in the Professional Development within the IISA. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. Simba, maybe I'm going to kick off with yourself because Mukfin is well known for the training and development initiatives and so on. And maybe just as a little bit of a backdrop to this, what motivated you to make developing skills in the industry such a big focus for Mukfin?
So Mukfin, we are in insurance and reinsurance intermediary. We provide professional advice and intermediary services to clients who would like to transfer risk. Essentially, we've got direct clients who are in the operational phase, and then we've got insurance companies who are assuming risks in the market. They also need to insure their risks, so they buy reinsurance from the market. And you find that in the main, our part there becomes advisory, which means providing clients with advice on risk, advice on solutions, making them aware of emerging risks, which is one of the topics that we're discussing now. So then it becomes very essential that as part of our conversations with our clients and our partners, training becomes a pillar of everything that we do, becomes central to what we do, because that part of knowledge sharing, knowledge exchange, and research is very critical to our business. Our business is a people's business. It's all about connecting people, but it is essential that if you are connecting people, there should be a common understanding between or among the parties that are discussing anything. And if we talk about discussing risk, it becomes very essential that at least we have that part, that opportunity and that platform to discuss and have a common understanding on both sides. And for us as an intermediary, we find it relevant and very necessary that we take a central role in coordinating the aspect about training and skills development. We also bring in the issues about the changing requirements in the market, the changing type of staff members that are coming in the market from the youngsters, and all of that, you realize there are very huge opportunities for training, for reskilling, and for retraining. So I think that's the space where we find ourselves, and I'm happy to say that we have found a niche space to differentiate ourselves from the rest of the transactional brokers in the market.
Absolutely, yeah, it is very clear that from the initiatives that I've seen that you're putting in a lot of effort. Kopano, you guys work directly and focus on skills development in the industry. The IISA has been around for a very long time. I can't remember now, but it must be close to 100 years or so that we've had this Insurance Institute. And you have a whole lot of programs, etc. And maybe just to put the industry a little bit on the spot, do you see enough focus and enough spending from the industry side to develop skills, or is it still sort of something that is just left for HR to get on with?
Thank you so much, Tony. And you're right, you say it's putting the industry on the spot. We've seen quite a lot of training taking place, but I think what we can focus on is structured training. So you from what we see, you see quite a lot of training. So this one will be doing that part, the other one is doing that, but we see quite a few of structured training when it comes to what needs to be trained. But to your point, the gap that we're seeing in the industry, it's technical skills. So we've got universities that focus on qualification, but when the individuals get into the market or when they come into the insurance space, there's a gap between the technical skills. So that's what I refer to when you say we need to look at structured training. So when we look at the gap, so we don't need to give a uniform type of training. So you know within your organization or overall as an industry, see, where is the gap? Where is the gap? And then how can we then invest in those skills? The investment is there. We see quite a lot of investment when it comes to training. However, for us is the training needs to be structured. The training needs to also support the career path. So what is the articulation of this individual? So you are not just focusing on an individual person. However, you're focusing overall on the building capacity, building capabilities of that individual. So for us is if we could structure it that way, then we know where we start, where we need to go. So career pathways, what are we looking at? Where's the leg? But what we're picking up is there's a need for technical training. Technical training, there's a gap there. So the focus needs to be there for alignment. Thank you, Tony.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Kopano. Muzi, maybe before I go to Webster with regards to the technical and the academic, on your side, how do we motivate staff to want to develop themselves, to spend personal time, because it's not always possible to just use company time for development. How do we motivate staff? How do we get that culture going for personal time also being spent on skills development?
Thanks, Tony. I think one of the things I noted early on when I started working, not only in the insurance space, I think in a number of disciplines, is that there's a lack of capability to scale out career for a person. You know, the capability to say, look, if you're a graduate coming in to work, maybe say as an insurer, you should be able to plan your life around that career to say, look, after 2 years, if I've got this qualification, this is where I can grow to. I think linking the career path with some kind of incentive to grow has been one thing that maybe lacked a bit. So one of the things we've tried to do as an institution, as an organization, and I must admit it's something we did recently, was to say we came up with a way to scale up a person to say, look, if you're going to be able to possess this qualification, you are moving from being an office at this grade. So that gives people the motivation to say, in as much as I'm in the institution, I need to at least work towards getting this qualification so that I grow to this grade. You know, as well as mapping out qualification requirements for promotion. That is one of the ways I think we could try to develop that initiative to learn and acquire skill and get training. But for us, that's what we've done. And I must agree, maybe those are some of the few loopholes we've had as an industry.
Thanks, Muzi. Has anybody else, I think that's a very interesting one. I wanted to go to Webster now with a question, but you said something interesting about mapping out the qualifications and the career, the promotional opportunities, etc. Maybe Webster, Opelo, have you guys experimented with something like that in your organization?
In our company, we haven't experimented with that per se, but skills development is approached as a strategic priority rather than just a routine training exercise. We believe that building strong technical and analytical capabilities within the team is essential because it maintains brilliant underwriting and responding effectively to an increasingly complex risk environment. Our approach combines practical experience with continuous learning. So team members are encouraged to develop their skills through exposure to real underwriting and risk management decisions, which helps both the company and it also builds them technical competency and professional judgment. So at the same time, the company supports participation in professional courses, industry seminars, and training programs just to ensure that our people stay current with developments in the industry. and emerging risks.
Mm.
So we also place strong value on knowledge sharing and mentorship within the organization, where we have experienced practitioners or underwriters or technical personnel guiding younger professionals, which helps transfer the knowledge and strengthen the overall capability of the team. And ultimately, Tony, the objective is to cultivate a skilled and forward-looking workforce that can support the long-term strategic goal of the company, also responding effectively to the evolving risk landscape.
Yeah, thanks, Opelo.
Thank you.
Webster, maybe before you respond to that, just to add in, and you can maybe include that in your response, is Kopano mentioned the technical programs as well as the practical skills development and the academic qualifications and balancing between those. On your side, how do you see us actually achieving that balance and optimizing everything that is available, on-site skills development, technical skills versus academic qualifications, etc.?
Thank you very much. That's a very important question, Tony. And it really speaks to my journey over the past 2 decades that I've been in the industry. I've tried to pursue both, and that's at personal level, and I've seen the benefits. So I would say, first of all, both have a place. Neither alone is sufficient. And when you speak about the formal qualifications, they give those theoretical foundations, which are very important. And then when you have those theoretical, foundations and credibility, especially, if you walk in a room, you have a professional qualification. Let's take an example of CII, okay? No one would doubt your qualification. It gives you that professional credibility, which is respected in the industry. But at the same time, like Kopano said, there's a gap between, academia and practice, all right? So as much as you may get those formal qualifications, sometimes they will not speak to what's on the ground or the specific needs of the industry. And this is where industry skills then gain significance. So industry programs, they build that relevance and agility. And this is where we see players like Swiss Re, Munich Re, Zep Re, among others. They run these industry-specific and technical academies. What the Institute of South Africa, where Kopano is coming from, those are the programs which they run, which become very important because then they seek to provide these specific skills which are needed in the industry. And when you look at our African insurance landscape, the talent pipeline is very thin. So we cannot afford to have to be either or. I think running both tracks simultaneously becomes the right balance. So I would obviously lean more on like the seasoned practitioners taking those industry programs which are specific. Of course, the classroom experience alone cannot keep pace with the speed at which emerging markets are unfolding. So I would be of the view that a blend of the two and having that multi-generational approach, like in the case of Finsbury, we're very deliberate about having a multi-generational mix in our staff so that the more experienced professionals can transfer that knowledge to the younger ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And Simba, maybe just coming to you here with Webster mentioned, the different companies offering training, etc., and also the, we've spoken about the motivation for training and so on. On your side, what do you find the people that do attend your training sessions and your conference and so on? What type of skills or types of interventions are they most interested in when you put something out and people register and attend?
So a very important point that has been brought up, I think, in all discussions from Kopano, Opelo, Webster, and Muzi. And I think just to dovetail into that before I answer your question, I think the combination of academic studies and technical training, it is really very essential. The academic studies give someone the capacity, basically, to absorb probably what they're trained, what they're taught, even in the workplace, the capacity for critical thinking, which is one of the most essential skills that anyone needs in the workplace, and so forth. So the academic space really is a necessity for anyone, especially in our professional industry. And that is why sometimes you can take a person who has studied accounting and they can run a company. You can take a person who has studied engineering, they can sell insurance, because what is really critical at that point is the capacity for someone to be able to grasp whatever new information that they have and apply it, use their critical thinking and apply it. Now, your technical training in this space, and this is the space where I think you're mentioning the IISA, even Mukfin were involved in that space. You find that we are discussing in particular the aspect about emerging risks. You will find that your academic space is a bit rigid because those programs, they take time to be developed, curated, and once they're done, they've got a certification process, and when they're rolled out, I think they've got like a lifespan. And it's very difficult to find that level of responsiveness in the academic space. But your practical training is where you have that responsiveness. It's on the go, on the job, as and when things emerge, as and when risks emerge, and also as and when skills gaps are identified, you are able to structure specific training to address those needs. Now, in terms of what we find to be satisfying for clients is that it's actually a whole process. The first part being the needs identification part or the gap analysis part. That enables you to identify what specific training needs are required, and what is relevant and satisfying for candidates is that when they go for training, the training is relevant, and you can't provide relevant training if you have not done that gap analysis and needs analysis. It's really, I don't know what the right way to find, but if someone is to go to training and then they find that this training is not relevant for me, it's really a waste of resources, a waste of time. You probably lose that particular individual for a much longer time. So it is very essential that whatever training is provided, it must meet someone's needs. And then the training must be practical. You see, to differentiate it from the academic, because academics, they've got a mandate that they are supposed to deliver, and sometimes it might mean spelling out the theory around something else. But when it comes to the training that we are talking about now, the practical training, it should be practical. You should be able to translate the theory into practice. You should be able to demonstrate to someone exactly how things work. And you find that a lot of candidates really appreciate that part, because sometimes you find that someone has gone for academics, they come to work, and when they're called for training again, they go through a definitions process defining things, and that does not add value. What adds value is them actually simulating their real life real life scenarios and helping them through the process of generating ideas, or the process of solving problems, or just the process of dealing with issues that they are facing in the workplace. So that is really very essential. And again, to come to the point that Moses has mentioned, there must be relevance in terms of the career path. So we are talking of emerging risks. We are talking of maybe future skills that are needed. I might not be doing that now, but if there's a plan, or if there's a trajectory of me going into management, it's relevant for me to get management training before I'm a manager. So you find that people really want that aspect of you building in the future into what you are training them. So it's a combination of various aspects, but you find that if the process is really followed, I think you will capture the right, you capture the candidates at the right opportunity.
Yes, and maybe I can go to Kopano here to ask, how do we assist candidates with that process that Simba's talking about, to try and evaluate where they are on in their career and in their development process, so that they go to the relevant training, that they don't try and do something that maybe that it's much better for them to do something else before they get there. Like a junior person should maybe not go and spend money and time on doing a leadership course. They should maybe first develop their own position in the company and their technical skills there before they look towards that. How do we go about assisting candidates with evaluating their career path?
Thank you, Tony. That's a very important question. And I think to add to your question, to the earlier question that you asked, that the investment in the skill. So it's very important. So what we encourage as IISA is the organizations will know the type of a learner. One of my colleagues here indicated that you need to map your career in the next 2 years, where you've started, where you want to go. That's Mr. Shongwe says where you want to go, where you've started. So it's very important. So what we try to avoid is just doing a blanket skills program where you just take everyone into the same program, and only to find that it does not benefit everyone. And also, it also discourages people. So that's when then you find people who are not motivated to complete the course, if it's a course that they need to do, because it does not speak to what they want to do. So with us, what we normally do, when we are called in to put together a training program, we first need to understand, we do a root cause analysis. We need to check where the people are at and what type of program or type of training that we then need to put those individuals into. So we don't just put a training across and say this will fit everyone, because one size does not fit everyone. So we do a root cause analysis. From that, then we can then map out what is the career path, what are the programs that an individual or that particular group needs to look at. So for us, it's very important to start there so that we know that we're addressing the pain points. We are not just ticking the box on what needs to be done. So it's very important. So we look at that, and then we map the career path for the individual. So if you start here, this is where you need to do. But again, for us, what we look at, it's not just an individual. We are not just building an individual. We are capacitating people around the organization so that we work on performance. Because you can take everyone for training. They will come back with all the qualification, but are they able to apply what they've went training for? Are they able to apply what you went for training? So for us, it says, let's look at the performance. Let's look at what we're trying to achieve out of this training that we put people into. So then we nurture that. We nurture that and says, where do we go into that? I know sometimes people, when they look at what the organization is offering, they will see leadership program, and then they will think they need to be part of that. But you find that you need to start. Many years ago, we used to have COP. You need to start at the foundation of the elements of insurance. So, and we are trying to bring that back. Hence, we're looking at says, if we look at the technical skills, what needs to be there? So let's build that foundation. Once we've built the foundation, then we know what areas, which pillars to pull and which levers to pull, so that we can be able to say, where are we plucking, why are we plucking there, and how do we do that, and what are we aiming to achieve? So ultimately, we need to be able to measure that type of training that we provide to individuals. But it's important to start at the beginning for those that need to. So outlining them, putting them in different categories, and then we'll be able to cover that. Thank you, Tony.
Absolutely. And I think before I ask the next question to our guests, what you said now, it reminded me of that story about the development executive that was standing with the CEO, and he was requesting his budget and so on, and he asked for 4.5 million rand for training, and the CEO said to him, "Sure, that's a lot of money. What if we spend all that money and the people leave?" And the development manager turned around and said to him, what will happen if we don't spend that money and those people stay? And I think that's the important part. You want developed people, and you want people that are technically astute. But maybe, and that's where my question now comes in, and I'll start with you, Webster, because you have spent quite a bit of time on academic development as well. Especially academic qualifications, but also a lot of technical qualifications and training can cost a lot of money, can be very expensive. How do you decide which candidate is ready to go and which not? And how do you sort of spread that money that is available in a company and decide what are you going to spend on formal training, on technical, practical, etc.?
Well, that's a very difficult question, but very important. Yeah. So in terms of talent identification, or at what point someone should start maybe being trained in the leadership program and so on and so forth, what I've come to understand is that these leadership programs should actually come earlier than what most organizations think. It is important for organizations to develop a leader before they give them a title. Now, that doesn't just happen. It's a function of the environment within the organization and also the desire of individuals. So if, for instance, a company has got education and development programs which they support, but then there is no willing employee to take them on, they will not be utilized. So when I joined the industry some 2 decades ago, I found people in the industry who were getting very good money, and they were comfortable. They were not ambitious. Some of them were not ambitious enough to pursue qualifications beyond what they entered with. So that's a very key point, because it boils down to the ambitions of an individual. But for a company, it's important, to have deliberate policies that identify talent and provides a platform upon which talent can thrive. One of the things that we are, as an emerging market, when I say an emerging market, Africa and beyond, succession. Sometimes we struggle with succession because we're not deliberate about that. All right. So when we are very deliberate about succession, we identify talent early and put these talented employees, the leaders, the young leaders, put them on a growth and development path, expose them, mentor them. Programs such as what Mukfin is doing, these are very important programs. This and other programs which they are running, expose the young, professionals to such platforms. I, for one, I got exposed to the international market way back, maybe around 2014, 2015, somewhere there. I was very fortunate that my supervisors at the time, they saw some talent in me, and they were very deliberate in investing in me so that I could be groomed in leadership. So it's a function of, the organization, but there should also be a willing employee there. And maybe my final point on this, Tony, is my doctorate work, which I did here in Zambia. There is evidence which suggests a very strong correlation between leadership development and market penetration. So unfortunately, you find from the evidence out of my study, the insurance industry has not invested a lot in leadership. So no wonder it speaks to the low penetration levels that we have, because you can be a good technical person, right? A good accountant, a good underwriter, but they may be lacking in leadership skills. But for you to lead an organization, it's beyond technical capabilities. You need leadership skills. So that's how I would look at it. It's both from the employer and the employee side, and there has to be convergence at some point.
Absolutely. And maybe I can add there, to come back to the technical skills and the questions I asked earlier on. The challenge is always to make sure that where you spend your money, and somebody said that as well, is the correct place. And it's also the correct thing for the candidate, etc. So in some way, we need potential candidates for leadership in the end to prove themselves as people that is ready or that could potentially become leaders. And that sort of says they need to show the initiative, they need to show the willingness to push through, because it will take a lot of their time. It would put pressure on their personal as well as their work time, etc. And technical skills and technical programs, maybe similar to what Simba and Mukfin offer, could be a good sort of way of identifying which candidates are actually able to learn and grow and apply what they've learned back to benefit the company. So on that, maybe just to ask Muzi and Opelo, and we'll start with Muzi, what your thoughts are on sort of identifying before you spend money.
Sure. Look, I think for me, really, the individual aspect is very critical on this discussion. I think Webster mentioned something about him getting into the industry and he found people comfortable. I think identifying talent is essential. Identifying people that are scalable within the organization is very important, because those things should be viewed as an investment. So if you see the talent is there, you see the drive is there from this person, I think that's where you then start even thinking about development for those people. He also mentioned, he actually mentioned a number of important things like policies within the institution. I think there are basic opportunities we should give to everyone in the organization to say, look, if you're going to work in this company, you at least need to scale yourself up as far as these technical courses are concerned. But then he also mentioned something about the talent identification, which is where maybe I would want to link it to your question on now looking at this thing more like an investment in somebody. You know, the basic trainings is something you're just doing for everybody in the organization. Yes, it is an investment, but I would want to term it more like a standing cost, you know, for purposes of this discussion. But then there are these things that you then do over and above that, having seen the initiative, having seen that this person has drive, has determination, because those are the people you would want to lead an organization tomorrow. Those are the people you'd want to put as heads of departments, people who are self-driven, not people who need to be pushed to do certain things. So for me, I think really the issue of identifying the talent is key in investing in people that we have in the organization. And again, I also want to concur with what he says about having policies in place just to make sure that, look, we provide these trainings for everybody and maybe give some kind of incentive for people who then deliver after those qualifications or trainings have been done.
Yeah. Opelo, any comments from your side?
Thank you, Tony. I would like to write off what my fellow panelists have already stated, but at the core of it all, we should align the training skills development with the strategy of the company. So employees are developed in areas that should support business growth as well as innovation and emerging risks. But at the core of it is individual development plans, where each staff member typically has to develop a personalized development plan, which will identify the skills gap and sets the career goals clearly and map out the training and development that is needed for that particular individual. Because this process will mostly create a more targeted and meaningful process for both the employee and the company. I'll also add on to what Dr. Webster has already stated, where we need to develop talent pipelines for leadership, where we focus strongly on grooming future leaders and high potential employees who we identify early, and we give opportunities to build into leadership and decision-making or strategic thinking skills. All the same, we need to place a greater emphasis on soft skills as well as adaptation. Soft skills, I'm talking about your communication skills, your emotional intelligence, and just the adaptability. I'll also refer back to our good doctor's contribution where he spoke about agility. So we need an adaptable workforce which can work with different generations across the workplace. Because nowadays we have a mix of baby boomers, Gen Zs, and millennials working together. So we need that touch of soft skills.
Yeah, no, absolutely, too true. And I think to sort of, Simba, I'm going to come to you with this next sort of question, but one of the things that Muzi mentioned, you know, is the in terms of the leadership training, the technical training. It's almost like the technical and the practical training is an ongoing essentiality. It's a given. This is what needs to happen because risks keep on changing, the demand on compliance and all of those sort of things, the methods of how we assess changes all the time, the tools that we have change. So that is a given. We have to do that. And then on the other side, you've got the academic and the leadership, etc., that is going to be sort of more on a selective basis in terms of the right candidates and so on. So then coming back to you, Simba, because you're very involved in the practical, etc., side of the training. So I've got two questions. The one is, do you see candidates that come in that are repeat people and they come quite often? And is there a way to say, why do you think they do come back quite often and others might not come back as often?
Thank you, Tony. So I think, look, let me state that we can't say there's anything called overtraining. There is no overtraining. If there's an opportunity to train and retrain and keep training, it's welcome. What's essential is the philosophy behind it and the approach taken. So I'll tell you my experience. There's the one part where people come for retraining because the subject or the technical area that you are training is difficult to understand, difficult to implement, or difficult to grasp. So you still need to go over and over and over and make sure that eventually, after some time, people eventually get it or things start working as they are supposed to, which is the positive part. And then there's the part where, and I think from a point of view of philosophy, where I would like to caution is where sort of you try and use that in the performance area where someone is not performing, and then you realize that it is sort of like coined as a tool to punish non-performers, that then turns out to be a wrong tool, a wrong model in that space, because most of the time, I think, like what the previous panelists have mentioned, is that it then lacks the individual ingredients of drive and passion and, the level of engagement that the individual needs to have to be able to make the training investment productive. So it is a positive aspect if it is used with the right philosophy, but it can be detrimental also, and it can be a waste of resources if it's not done correctly.
Absolutely. A last question before I wrap up between everyone is for Simba and Kopano mostly, but we'll get some comments from the other panelists as well, is going over to the trainer, the person doing the training. When it comes to the practical and the technical, in my experience, the most effective training is somebody who is doing that particular job, somebody who's an expert in that, somebody who's been doing it for a while, and you can say that they are a technical expert and they know how to fulfill that function. And in itself, the training is also development for them. So first of all, Simba, from your side, do you have access to enough people that are willing to put their time into training, and do they see the value for themselves in doing that training?
That's a difficult one, Tony. It's a difficult one because the space where we are participating is a space where you need highly skilled and highly experienced individuals. And you find that these individuals are in the form of our panelists who are here. They're extremely busy people. So to find a good time when they can spare hours or days to deliver the training, it's really a challenge. And as you mentioned, that in order for you to deliver training, especially practical training, you should be knowledgeable, you should have experience, and you should be able to deliver the training with some level of expertise. And it's not a space that you can just pull anyone from the street and say, I've got a class that needs training, please just come and spend the day. So you find that that's the balance that we need to sort of like find in the industry. And unfortunately, it's a space where sometimes I want to understand it's a resource issue that sometimes these people need also to have enough incentives to be able to spare time and deliver the kind of training that is required. It's a challenge, and therefore sometimes you find that you really have to take it from a strategic point of view as a commitment, as we do in Mukfin, that this is our commitment, that we are going to do this, and sometimes you do whatever it takes to deliver the training.
Yeah, I'm going to come to the other panelists now for some comments on that. But Kopano, just from your side and the IISA, should we spend more time on developing trainers and specific people that are equipped to train, to know how to impart their knowledge? Are there programs for people like that, or do we just source people that are willing to spend their time and that are knowledgeable?
The first answer to your first question, yes, we do need to spend time in training people, to develop people, because we are experiencing an aging force where the skills are sitting, and also where the talent and the transfer of knowledge is currently sitting. So my colleagues alluded that we've got different generations that are entering the market, and we need to learn from those who have walked the journey prior to us. And we are seeing quite a lot of those that are aging. Some of them are already retiring from the industry, and we don't want to create a gap. So our role as IISA is to make sure that skills development it's number one in our list. So it's a priority on what we do. So we need to currently or consistently create that pool of expertise. So where there's a need, that's why we're busy emphasizing that we need to do technical knowledge. We need to focus on that, because that you cannot learn somewhere else. And what Mukfin and the likes of what they do, it's very important, because there you get to learn practically what needs to be done. And in that space, we then need to make sure that the current subject matter experts or the trainers, they are also equipped on what is happening currently, because things are changing. So we don't want people who always says, we used to do like this 20 years, 30 years ago. Things have evolved. So we need to be able to constantly develop the group or the pool of the experts that are responsible for training. So there's a quote that I've once seen, says, you learn, unlearn, and relearn. So learning, it's you cannot say I've learned and I'm an expert and I know. So it is important, and there is a shortage of skilled people that can train. There is a shortage. So to Simba's point, there's a shortage, and also there is capacity in terms of the availability of the resource. You do find people that are very knowledgeable in certain skills, and especially the ones that are very scarce. There's a certain niche of the business where we're struggling to find subject matter experts, to find trainers in those spaces. So those are the spaces that we need to develop. There's a specific ones. So we are currently within the IISA, because we are custodian of the body of knowledge in terms of the books and the study material that we have. But we try to make sure that the niche business is also taken care of. So it's difficult, for an example, to find someone who deals with aviation or marine or engineering. Those are some of the skills that we're seeing gap in how to work around those. And we're seeing, again, the aging force in that space. So it's very important that we constantly engage and capture that knowledge, capture those skills, and be able to impart that skills to the next generation, people that are coming after us who needs to understand this business. Because there's different emerging, we spoke about emerging markets, emerging risk. There's a lot of risk. Some of them, they are no longer emerging risk. They are here to stay. And we need to be able to say, how do we deal with those ones that are here? And every day there's new ones that are coming in. How do we deal with those things? And in that, as risk emerge, as risk comes in, we need to be updating the policy wordings. We need to be updating all lot of things. So we do need to ensure that we got enough skills to cater for that. Yes, we do need more subject matter experts and the trainers in this space.
Yeah, Simba, you wanted to comment on that?
Yes, I think just to add on to what Kopano is saying, really very interesting angle also, and just want to complement it what we are doing. For example, I think Tony, you might be aware, we are holding our annual conference this year, annual conference and masterclass on cyber and AI, which are emerging risks. And just to give you an idea of how we are blending this issue about skill scarcity, training providers, and so forth. So what we then do is we provide a space where we can bring in highly qualified, highly experienced professionals in that space in the emerging risks, and they spend time with the delegates in a conference training setup. But the difference is you find that we find a blend between, it's not an extreme conference where a speaker just comes and talks and leaves, or training room where you've got a lecturer type of person just dishing out theory. We make it really practical that the presenter has an opportunity to interact with the delegates, asking questions and answering until the subject is almost exhausted. So we provide that space, which we found to be an area of need, a niche in the market, which is really not addressed by most of the programs that are available.
Yeah, very important. And I look forward to that conference. We're on the hour, so I'm going to give each person a moment to just reflect on our conversation, and maybe let's do it in this way. I'm going to go around the room and ask you, if you had a magic wand for skills development in our industry, what would you like to see? Let's start with you, Webster.
Wow. First of all, this has been a very interesting conversation, and thumbs up to Simba and team. We need more of such, and I hope that this will reach as many people as it can reach. So, well, if I were to give my final hook, I would say between academic or academia and practical, we should stop treating these as separate conversations. We should treat them as a spectrum, which requires convergence at some point. And when we speak of academia, we should be aware or wary of the copy-paste approach, where we are adopting things that are used in different markets, for instance, in developed markets, and adopting those, approaches and implement them into our emerging markets. It may not work. We need to identify our real issues and structure solutions or programs that speak to our environment, right? So when you look at evidence, for instance, from the International Labour Organization, there is strong evidence that suggests that, successful training is a blend between academia and practice. So the practical aspect and also the academia, they need to speak each other. They shouldn't do things in isolation, so that they bring, programs that speak to the issues that we face in real life. Thank you.
Thank you, Webster. Muzi, your thoughts?
Yeah, for me, really, I think we should also consider bringing back these attachment programs that were there in in the olden days, where the youngsters would be given opportunities to get a feel of what we are doing before they start venturing into our trade. I think these attachment programs are critical in terms of building the foundation for them when they get into the workplace. And look, if you look at it, it's vibrant labor that we may need. You find that every organization is hiring people based on the current needs. But I can safely tell you now, there's always somebody in any organization that has a lot to do. So if we bring in these youngsters and give them an opportunity during their breaks, teach them some of these things, insurance, reinsurance, or building skill whilst they are still learning. So maybe it's a conversation we should think of as leaders, business leaders going forward. But I also just wanted to add that as Simba and Kopano were speaking, I think something dawned to me that it seems also there's an element of us maybe not budgeting well for training expenses as organizations, which may lead to the shortage maybe we're having of people even feeling that going the training route is a career. Some of them, because we've got people who have the skills, but maybe they are thinking if I were to leave this and focus on training, maybe companies are not investing as much on that. I think people like Simba are doing that just to service their clients predominantly. It's more than just making profit out of it. So maybe we should also consider spiking up our budgets towards this training so that people view them as something that should be taken seriously, even by the trainers themselves. Because if people realize that there are resources allocated to that, we can get good trainers who are willing to spend time on training.
Absolutely. Thank you, Muzi. Opelo, your thoughts?
Thank you so much, Tony. From a skills perspective, I think the biggest gap is no longer just technical expertise. Well, strong underwriting and risk assessment remain critical in our industry, but there's also an increasing need for multidisciplinary skills. So professionals must understand dynamics such as data analytics, technology, and regulatory environments, and even behavioral trends. So they're just as important as the skills I mentioned earlier, where we spoke about adaptability, critical thinking, and the ability to collaborate across generations and cultures. So where organizations need to invest in continuous learning, not just periodic training. We need to develop even internal trainers within our companies and leverage on mentorship, as well as creating platforms for knowledge sharing. So partnerships with academic institutions like IISA, as well as Mukfin, and industry bodies can also play a key role in closing the skills gap. That is my take on that one.
Absolutely. Thank you, Opelo. Kopano, last words from you and the Insurance Institute.
Thank you so much, Tony. I think my colleagues have summed it up. What we need is a shift. So it's a shift on how we approach skills development. Muzi has put it correctly. They're saying maybe there's a need for a better investment, how we invest in the skills. So for me, it's a shift. What do we do in terms of shifting people where they are and making them seeing things differently? Opelo spoke about critical thinking and all those, what we would call soft skills, and those are hard skills, because you cannot lead an organization or lead even in your space if you don't have all those types of skills. So we need to make sure that there's high quality of development opportunities. My colleagues alluded to that across all levels of the industry. We also need to look at what is the link between the skills development, the career progression, so that we develop a holistic individual. And remember, when we develop those individuals now, you've indicated earlier on that what will happen if we don't develop people and people stay. But if we develop people now, we're ensuring that we're developing them for the future fit. Because we're not doing it for now. We are not just doing it for now. We need to make sure that there's technical component, there's adaptability, there's future ready type of an overall individual. And we are committed to lifelong learning. So Opelo spoke about that, to say we continuously engage in terms of training. So it needs to be, there needs to be a continuation of that. And I like the part where it says where organizations are able to train their people so that you create that pool of the expertise within your organization. We are seeing quite a lot of organizations who have academy. They will have an academy within their organization, those who have capacity to do that. But then it becomes isolated because it's in that space. So how do we make sure that it goes throughout the industry? So it is our responsibility as an IISA to make sure that we create that platform where people can share ideas, where people can share skill, and also so that we ensure that we are future ready, because we cannot drop the ball now, but we need to make sure that we consistently work around that. And we also make insurance fashionable. I think we've done that. We've tried to move it from where it was to people want to be in the insurance space and see insurance as a career. So it's us who are currently there to make sure that people see insurance as, I want to be in that space. I want to do what they are doing because it adds value. So as I say, it's important. And when we go around teaching the young ones, we make them realize that there's a future in the insurance space. There's a whole lot of opportunities that one can embark on when you are in the insurance space. You just need to find the right fit for you and where you can then stay and then grow from there. Opportunities are endless. Thank you, Tom.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kopano. And Simba, last word for the event today.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you to our panelists for the rich discussion. I've learned quite a lot, much more than what I came in with into the discussion, over and beyond my expectation also. And I think those who are following this discussion actually have a lot of takeaways from the experts on this panel. I think to come to your question, Tony, is what I would like to see. For me, I would start with the individual. I would start with the individual. The youngsters, take your academic studies seriously. Take your academic studies very seriously. My experience is that it is really very difficult to train someone who doesn't have a strong academic base because the capacity is not there. No matter how much people invest, no matter how much people are willing to train you, if you don't have that capacity, it is very difficult to train you. It is very difficult to upskill you, and it is very difficult to upscale you in your careers. So take your academic studies very seriously. No matter what you are studying, take it seriously because it creates that capacity for you to absorb new things, to learn new skills, and to deploy new skills in the marketplace. My second and last point is, please try and give value to the organization that has trained you. Because if you don't do that, it goes against everything that we are saying here, that companies must invest in training, companies must increase their training. But sometimes what you do, what disheartens leaders, is that they send someone for a very expensive program. They go there, they get knowledge, they get their eyes opened. Instead of using that knowledge to improve the place and give back to the investment that they've received, they use that essentially to run away and find somewhere else and go create value somewhere else. Not that we are proposing that people must be constrained, but all I'm saying is at some level, even if you are to leave some value where you have been trained, because that then makes sure that the cycle continues, the next generation benefits, the other people below you, whether you're related to them or not, whether you know them or not. But that cycle must continue. That investment and reinvestment must continue. That's my my ambition, what I want to see, more on the individual. Thank you.
Absolutely, Simba, thank you very much. Yeah, it's almost like a bit of a call to action at this stage to people to make sure that they upskill themselves, but on the other side, for people with technical training to make themselves available as trainers or to be upskilled as trainers. And then lastly, for the companies to invest in their people and send their people for technical training, spend money on academic training, and share that knowledge across the industry. So everybody, thank you very much. Very interesting discussions. It's great to be interacting with you, and thank you so much for spending some of your valuable time to give back to the industry. Really enjoyed the interaction.